General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
For over 25 years, the Berlin Wall stood as the symbol of Cold War contention, separating East from West Berlin and marking the dividing line between the world of communism and the world of democracy. Reagan's speech at the Brandenburg Gate in June of 1987 was monumental and marked the beginning of a string of events that would, in a remarkably short span of time, remove this dividing line to the ash heap of history. In December of 1987, the Cold War continued to thaw as Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev sat side by side at a table once used by Abraham Lincoln to sign the most groundbreaking treaty between the United States and the Soviet Union to date.
The INF Treaty, as it's called, the Intermediate Nuclear Force Treaty, which got rid of all of the intermediate range nuclear weapons that were pointed at each other across the Iron Curtain in Europe. What makes that so significant is that it was the first time in history that we began to destroy nuclear weapons and eliminate an entire class of nuclear weapons. That took a lot of confidence building, it took a lot of negotiation, but it was done. And all those nuclear weapons of the INF category are gone. And it was from that base level that we could then start doing other agreements that were very, very helpful.
In 1988, U.S.-Soviet relations continued down the path of peace, and in May, the President made a historic visit to the nation he once described as the evil empire. After speaking at Moscow State University, Reagan walked the streets of Red Square with Gorbachev in a public display of camaraderie that symbolized a new era of East-West relations.
But before things get too far out of hand,
пока не слишком уж далеко мы зайдем.
I would find ourselves standing like this.
Лучше вот так.
Every time Gorbachev came to the United States, and when I was National Security Advisor, whenever we saw him, President Reagan didn't want him to see our guns or tanks. He always wanted to take Gorbachev to a factory. He always wanted to take Gorbachev to a housing development. He always wanted to take him to a shopping mall somewhere. He always wanted to show him what can come from a free democratic, free economic system.
When you have to change horses in midstream, doesn't it make sense to switch to one who's going the same way?
1988 was an election year, and the Republican Party nominated Vice President George Bush to succeed Ronald Reagan and carry the GOP banner for another 4 years.
But George, just one personal request. Go out there and win one for the giver.
George Bush won in a landslide and was inaugurated in January of 1989.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The time had come for Ronald Reagan to bid farewell as the nation's 40th president.
It's been quite a journey this decade, and we held together through some stormy seas. And at the end, together, we're reaching our destination. The fact is, from Grenada to the Washington and Moscow summits, from the recession of 81 to 82, to the expansion that began in late 82 and continues to this day, we've made a difference. We've done our part, and as I walk off into the city streets, a final word to the men and women of the Reagan Revolution, the men and women across America who for 8 years did the work that brought America back. My friends, we did it. We weren't just marking time, we made a difference. We made the city stronger, we made the city freer, and we left her in good hands. All in all, not bad. Not bad at all. And so, goodbye, God bless you, And God bless the United States of America.
I think Ronald Reagan was the most presidential man I ever knew. He knew exactly who he was. He knew exactly what he believed, and he knew exactly where he wanted to go. And those aren't bad. They aren't bad cornerstones for an American president. They have not always been so in every dimension and every aspect.
Ronald Reagan retired to his beloved ranch in Santa Barbara, California. Little did he know that 1989 would be a year of unprecedented democratic reform throughout the world. In March, citizens in the Soviet Union went to the polls to elect their own leadership, the first time since 1917. In June, Poland held free parliamentary elections, and of the 100 seats up for vote, 96 went to Solidarity candidates. This gave Solidarity a firm foothold in Poland's new government and paved the way for Solidarity's chief founder, Lech Walesa, to win the presidential election the following year. Also in June of '89, we witnessed an amazing demonstration in China as idealistic students pushing for democratic reforms put their lives on the line in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. In September, Hungarian border guards were ordered to tear down the barbed wire fence separating Hungary from Austria, and 60,000 people were allowed to leave the country. At long last, the Iron Curtain was opening. In Czechoslovakia, the communist regime was voted out of power, ending a 41-year monopoly. In stepped opposition leader and renowned writer Václav Havel as the new president. In November of 1989, the world watched in awe as the Berlin Wall, one of the most notorious and imposing symbols of oppression in the world, was literally knocked down. In Romania, dictator Nicolae Ceausescu was ousted along with his communist regime in December, and the people instilled a provisional government. The momentum of democracy continued into the next decade, and in February of 1990, Nicaragua elected Violeta Chamorro over Daniel Ortega in the country's first free election since the Sandinistas assumed power in 1979. In October of 1990, the border dividing East and West Germany was erased, reunifying the nation after 45 years of separation. That year, the tiny Baltic Republic of Lithuania broke from the USSR by declaring its independence and restoring its 1938 constitution. In September of 1991, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was dissolved. The 70-year-old government structure that began with the Bolshevik Revolution was scrapped. The Cold War was over, and the forces of democracy had prevailed. The world would never be the same again.
The Reagan administration deserves huge credit for having brought about conditions in which the Cold War could be ended and transcended.
I'm convinced that the most important legacy by far is the legacy that Reagan and Gorbachev left together of ending the Cold War. They didn't do it by themselves. You got to give Bush and Helmut Kohl and Margaret Thatcher and others some credit, but Reagan took the leadership in that, and that's the greatest legacy, because the notion that we had the capacity to incinerate ourselves in a nuclear holocaust was not metaphor, it was true. Now we still have that capacity, but we're a lot less likely to do it.
As the new world dawned, the sunset of the old world began to fade, and with it, the extraordinary life of Ronald Reagan. In 1994, the former president formally announced that he suffered from Alzheimer's disease. In his letter to the public, Reagan's conclusion affirmed that his grand sense of optimism was as strong as ever. I now begin the journey that will lead me into the sunset of my life. I know that for America there will always be a brighter dawn ahead. Thank you, my friends, and God bless you.